MLG. If you're old enough to understand what on earth I just said, perfect, this video is for you. Even more so if you've got no idea where you want to take your walk with God and you're wondering, what do I do? Who do I look to? I mean, there's too many old people in scripture. Are there any people my age who I can look upon? Answer is yes. I'm going to show you through 5 biblical examples of said biblical teenagers, what principles we can get from them, and how both you and I can grow in our walks with Christ. Okay, so we'll start with Jeremiah. Jeremiah he's obviously one of the biggest major prophets we have in the Old Testament, and at the time of his calling, surprise, surprise, he was around about 17. So one of the issues that both you and I face is, okay, how do I voice out what I believe in to those around me? What will they say? What will I do? What if they don't like me or whatever? And so for that, I want to start with, Jeremiah chapter 1 verses 6 to 9, because, he basically had the same thoughts. So what happened with him? Then I said, God, behold, I do not know how to speak, for I am only a youth. But the Lord said to me, do not say I am only a youth, for to all to whom I send you, you shall go. And whatever I command you, you shall speak. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you to deliver you, declares the Lord. Then the Lord put out his hand and touched my mouth, and the Lord said to me, behold, I have put my words into your mouth. Okay, first off, so what are we gathering from that? In the same way that how you and I may have the feelings, okay, I don't really know what to say, I might be too young, I'm not too qualified, I don't have enough experience. God is clearly saying, no, age does not matter. Remember, this is the same God who can bring praise out of infants, who can raise our children of Abraham out of rocks, and creates the entire universe as we know it out of nothing. With man, it may be possible, but remember, this is God we're dealing with, and with God, it is not impossible. And as you'll see as you go through later examples, God can use both the young and the old to do great and wonderful things in spite of that. So, there's a verse I want to later on, which will be Joshua chapter 1, verse 7, which hopefully you're familiar with. If not, let's go through it. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do according to all the law that Moses, my servant, commanded you. Do not turn from it from the right hand to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. So remember, when we abide in God and follow his principles, generally, thus if you're Job, things will work out well for our good, according to those who are called according to his purpose. With that, and also the last verse, Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 9, which I want to bring your attention to, behold, I have put my words in your mouth. There's a similar parallel. Let's see if I can do it off the top of my head. It should be around Matthew 10:28. But essentially, it's the same thing. Do not worry about what you will say before the governors and the kings who you will be brought before. But remember that in those times, it is the Spirit which will give you the words to say. Same thing here as well. Behold, I have put my words in your mouth. We ultimately do not need to worry about what we need to say, not that we should be careless and just say whatever rubbish. However, when we listen to God and we listen to what words he's giving us, we don't have to generate them ourselves. We don't have to worry, what are my words going to do? What if I say the wrong thing? Listen and listen very, very carefully. When we hear and know God's voice, and when we hear God's voice talking to us, telling us what to say, when we say those words, that is the best outcome. Remember, God sees far more and God knows far more than anything we could possibly comprehend ourselves. Whatever God wants you to say will work out way better than anything you can imagine. And the thing is, it's like burden off you. Remember, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Sound familiar? Besides, before I leave on that note, you'll probably find on YouTube, if you check out, let's say Mapala for instance, there's actually a lot of young people who are able to speak boldly for Christ. The reason why they're able to, and the reason why you might be thinking you're not, isn't because they've got some special knack for public speaking. You'll be surprised to find that at least half of them have the exact opposite. The reason why they're so bold to go out and speak boldly for Christ is ultimately because they remember verses such as these. Behold, I've put my words in your mouth. All we really need to do, all we need to worry about is just putting ourselves out there and letting God do the rest through us. Secondly, we've got King David, a man after God's own heart, the slayer of Goliath. Remember, at this time, David also wasn't going to be particularly old, also estimated around the teenage years. So, why do I bring up David? Prior to David's rise from the bottom to the top, when Samuel was essentially going through the house of Jesse to see, okay, who's going to be the king, as God foretold, everyone thought it was going to be the big ones, the big, obvious, strong ones who were going to be anointed as king. And so, side note, I just wanted to remind you that God does not judge the outwardly of the appearance, but the inwardness of the heart. What are the takeaways I want you to get from David in particular? There's two of them I want you to focus on. One of them is that, well, remember David was a shepherd. So he by himself obviously had to protect the sheep from whatever dangers were out there in the world. The wolves, the lions, the bears. How on earth could such a small, fragile boy defend himself against them? By the strength of God. So even as we see with Goliath as well, we see small unconventional tools which you wouldn't really think would be able to do much. However, remember that with a simple slingshot and a stone, David slayed Goliath. He's killed bears and lions, and going back onto a point I briefly mentioned with Jeremiah as well, with man, this would be impossible. I mean, how's a little boy going to beat a lion? But remember, with God, all things are possible. That's the first takeaway. The second one, which you're going to see repeated with at least one other biblical teenager as well, is he was a teenager of skill, presence, and speech seasoned with wisdom. Okay, so what do I mean by skill? So if we go to Samuel chapter 16 verse 18, one of the young men answered, "Behold, I have seen a son of Jesse the Bethlehemite, who is skillful in playing, a man of valor, a man of war, prudent in speech, and a man of good presence. And the Lord is with him." Grow our influence, get other people to be more willing to hear what we've got to say, is kind of generally just have something to offer to those around us. Unfortunately, it's just a general form of life. If you want to, let's say, have a business which grows, you've obviously got to have products and stuff which people want to buy. In this case, well, we're people of skill, so let's say when we perform well in school, obviously other people are going to want to listen to you. Okay, how are you doing so well? What do? You studying 12 hours a day? No. I put in the hard work, and I trust in God. And so when we are people of skill, obviously it's going to attract more attention which you can use for good. There's the second thing, which is presence. So I'm mentioning presence. What we have here, and a presence just as I'm here standing before you right now, the reason why we've got like a larger presence here rather than other people might be short, carrying, not really sure what they want to do, is confidence. Remember, our confidence is not even in ourselves, but it is in God, the great, almighty, untouchable God, whose infinite knowledge and riches and goodness cannot be searched by us as humans. This is who we put our confidence in when all else fails, when we fail, when this world falls and crumbles. There is going to be one thing which is constant and eternal, and that is God. That is who our confidence is in. And so when we place our confidence in Him, when God has told us, okay, oh, speak, behold, I have put my words in your mouth, and etc. This is the confidence which we move in. And as such, this is the presence we move in. So when we establish ourselves in an area and we move with the confidence of God, great things will happen. And so here's the third bit which I want to bring upon this is prudent in speech. Prudent, that's just thinking ahead, being wise, planning for the future, these sort of things. The reason I want to bring this up is because I want to take your mind to this, and also Colossians chapter 4 verse 6. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. So first bit, let your speech be gracious. Be kind. Don't be using words of curses. After all, in James chapter 3 we see, how can both blessings and curses come from the same mouth? This cannot be. Can a saltwater pond produce fresh water? No. In the same way, from our mouths, it should not be the good and the bad coming out, but rather only the good. That whatever we say, we may be able to bless and build up and edify those around us rather than put people down. And seasoned with salt, so that's us answering stuff in wisdom, where obviously we're going to find wisdom. The Bible, pray for the wisdom of God, because when earthly wisdom fails, godly wisdom will not. And also, this is also similarly going back onto the idea where, okay, God has given us the words, when we listen to God and we follow His direction and speak in the manner of words which He is giving to us, our words will be seasoned with salt. They will be powerful and effective in producing great change in the places around us rather than, like I said before, bringing people down. That's not our job, that's not our goal. That's what the devil and his demons are for. Not us. So, right before I leave there, key takeaways from David would be being a person of skill, presence, based in the confidence of God, and with our speech seasoned with salt, and us speaking in wisdom. Okay, so next up on the list we've got Daniel. I'd hope you know who Daniel is, but if you don't, here's a quick crash course. Daniel was one of the best and brightest youths from Israel, taken by King Nebuchadnezzar, so that was the king of Babylon, taken from Israel to Babylon, solely for the growth and development of Babylon as a nation. And so in this program, what they would do once they've taken these youths would basically educate them to the best of their ability in Babylon, give them Babylonian names to kind of emphasize the whole, you are no longer Jewish, you are Babylonian now, and essentially have these children grow up to be big, productive leaders, and as such in the nation of Babylon ultimately for its growth. And so in the process of doing this, they would have eunuchs who would be in charge of, well, raising and feeding certain groups of these youths. And so with that context, let's hop into Daniel chapter 1 verse 9. Okay, so now that we understand the context, let's go to Daniel chapter 1 verses 8 to 9. But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food, or with the wine that he drank. Therefore he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. And as such, instead of eating the fancy meat or whatever at the table, he would eat solely fruits, vegetables, and water. And God gave Daniel favour and compassion in the sight of the chief of the eunuchs. Okay, so why was God giving Daniel favour and compassion in the sight of the chief of the eunuchs? Was it because he was going vegan? No. It was because Daniel had made a conscious decision to stick to doing only godly things. Here, in today's age, that could also be simply being, okay, whilst everyone else is probably going out to sugar or whatever to go party, you can make the conscious decision to stick to doing godly things and simply not go. That's one of the things. There's also standing up boldly for your faith. That's also another thing. Let's say even going to knock on the door and tell at least a flatmate about Christ. Maybe they know, maybe they don't. That's also a thing you've also got to consciously decide to stick to doing. Once again, no matter your age. Okay, next up we've got Joseph, who the Bible literally tells us that he is 17. And so for any of you with any doubts, oh, what about the others? I don't know if they're actually teenagers. Well, here you go, you've got Joseph. Hopefully you know Joseph. If you don't, maybe a little refresher might be multicolored jacket. If that doesn't bring him to mind, I honestly don't know what will. What can we find about Joseph? So I want to start with Genesis chapter 39. So, in this context, so we're at the stage where Joseph literally was sold into slavery by his brothers to the Midianites, from whom the Egyptians basically then bought him as a slave. So, the Lord was with Joseph and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favour in his sight and attended him, and he made him overseer of his house, and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he had made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in house and field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. So, what can we see from here? We can see that Joseph was successful with God in completing his tasks, and the parallel thought which I want you to bring to your mind would be Colossians chapter 3, verse 23. Whilst we're reading this, I want you to also have Colossians chapter 3, verse 23 in mind. Whatever you do, work heartily, as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive your inheritance as your reward. Okay, just as in the case as Daniel as well, when we work as for the Lord and not for men, as we work to the highest standard that those around us, God can use that to do great things through us. As we see in Daniel, he was used to get to a place of prominence where he could also lead an entire nation to start worshipping God, and in the same way as Joseph, who also rose up to be Pharaoh's second in command, who would later be the one responsible for enabling the nation of Israel to survive the famine, which was basically killing off almost everybody else but the Egyptians at the time. Second thing also would be, throughout the story, so somewhere in between these two events, whilst Joseph was growing in stature and power and success, the man who was basically his upper in command at the time, Potiphar, had a wife. And the reason why I break up this wife was because Joseph had all this power, fame, money. We see a lot of times these three things can attract you a lot of women in today's age as well. Similar things are happening in Egypt as well. In this case, this woman saw, okay, Joseph had such money, power, wealth, and she tried to hit on him. But obviously, what did Joseph do? What do we do when we're faced with lust or temptation in general? Flee from it. Run. Resist it. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. We do not partake in those things because the only fruit we shall reap from that is death. And so if you're thinking of verses to keep in mind, I think one of them should be, let's see if I can do it off the top of my head again. Okay, if you look at a woman lustfully, you've already committed adultery with her in your heart. And another verse, I think from Job, I've made a covenant with my eyes not to look upon a virgin with lust. As in Daniel chapter 1 verse 9, and a similar thing happening with Joseph as well. We must consciously decide to stick to doing godly things. And so here's a little bonus one. So I figured, should I mention it, should I not? Wasn't really sure, but I figured I might as well mention it anyway, just to kind of start wrapping up this whole thing. So that would be Luke chapter 2, verse 52. So this is Jesus around about the time, so he should be 12-ish around about the time that this happening. What essentially happened in this case was, for context, Mary, Joseph and Jesus went to Jerusalem to go to the temple to offer up the offerings for their son, and when they were supposed to leave, Mary and Joseph, they left. Jesus stayed behind and was teaching some of the scribes, and then Mary and Joseph come back to find them surprised that Jesus stayed. Jesus says, oh, why didn't you know I was going to be in my Father's house, my Father, God the Father? And right as this chapter ends, it ends, and Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favour with God and man. So that's also a big one. When we increase in favour, we're not here to ultimately please man. That's never the goal. That may be a good side product or whatever. If we do manage to please man, some things can happen which are good, but it should ultimately never be our goal, because if our goal is to please man and man alone, we become friends with the world. And remember, when we become friends with the world, we become enemies with God. And so when we do grow in favour, we grow in favour with God first in mind, in his righteousness and goodness. And then, if we happen to do things which also please man, with our eyes ultimately focused on God, great things will happen. We'll see this happening in Daniel. Daniel's a great example. So although the nation of Babylonia was blessed, they grew, they respected Daniel. The reason why they respected it in the first place was while him, Meshach, Abednego, and the other one, so those three guys also, they decided, okay, we are not going to worship this Babylonian king no matter what. And so as a result, because they stuck firm with God and they found favour in God's eyes first, the Babylonians, the men, later respected them for it. Same thing with Joseph. They worked for the Lord as not for men, and as a result, they found favour with God first, and they also happened to have successes with the men around them. God first, man second. And so with that, hopefully that gives you a couple of ideas and tips on how you would, be a biblical teenager, give you a couple of principles you can use, learn and apply. And overall, just want to remind you, it's not as hard, not as crazy as you think. Remember, age does not matter. I'll show you, I'll prove it to you. 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 12. Let no one despise you for your youth, but set the believers an example in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, in purity. You'll see this with all the examples we've mentioned here, and that's like where it should be you and I. When we do that, God will work greatly and wonderfully through each and every one of us, no matter our age. And with that said, I will see you in the next video. Cheerio.